Well, it's just come out that, shocking, Evan Rachel Wood has had a documentary project in the works for several years now, centering on her allegations against Marilyn Manson. This film, Phoenix Rising, is going to debut at the Sundance Film Festival in a little over a week, and then it's going to go to HBO, which is the home of many biased and non-evidence-based documentary hit pieces. So I'm not going to go into that right now, but if you know the history of HBO and some of their documentaries, you know what I'm talking about. So, this apparently the director of this film has known Evan Rachel Wood, she says, for 10 years, has been talking to her about this project for a number of years. They've been planning it, but apparently this project just really didn't catch on fire until Marilyn Manson's name was brought into it. And it seems like this was a project that was basically waiting for a big, shocking aha angle. And of course, they got it when Evan Rachel Wood decided that she would name Marilyn Manson as her abuser. And of course, she would do it while there was a documentary crew present to film the drama and the crying and the angst and all of that, the pathos of it all. So look, to those of you who have been telling me for months now, ever since I started defending Marilyn Manson, because I do believe he's innocent, to those of you who've been telling me, yeah, I see where maybe the other accusers who have dead-end careers might have something to gain from this, from the publicity and the media and, the People photo spreads and Rolling Stone exposés and all of that. Hardly worth mentioning, right? But people will say to me, okay, I see what those other losers have to gain from this, but what about Evan Rachel Wood? She has a career, she has money, she has esteem. Well, I don't know. I can't answer all those questions, but what I can say is she also now has a, 4-hour, 2-part documentary that's going to be on HBO that is going to paint a picture of her as a kind of a Joan of Arc of the domestic violence movement. So she's getting something out of it. In fact, she's getting quite a lot. And if you're like me, I, among others, believe that, and with good reason, that we're talking about, in a number of ways, a disturbed woman who has instigated and created a very well-orchestrated hoax against an innocent man who, despite his public image, which I know is crazy and scary and satanic and all of that, actually, it turns out, is very nice to women. And I've interviewed a number of women who have dated him and known him intimately and so forth, and they attest to that. But as do Rose McGowan, Me Too activist who was engaged to him for a year, Dita Von Teese, who said in a statement that he did not abuse her, and the other women, many women that he's dated who have not come forward to say negative things about him. But be that as it may, we're now at this point where we've got this documentary coming up. And, Amy Berg, the documentary filmmaker, she does not seem interested in exploring anything other than Evan Rachel Wood's perspective. And this is just something, again, that we've come to expect from these hit pieces that end up on HBO that just provide a very biased perspective of an accuser or accusers, and does not actually get into looking at the arguments for the other side or any evidence that might be exculpatory toward the accused or that might make the accusers look bad. HBO is just not interested in that. And so when this documentary goes to HBO, it's going to get all kinds of press, and it's just going to continue to be a huge stain on Marilyn Manson's reputation. But if Amy Berg is going to make a documentary, had a documentary about this, I would hope that she would ask Evan Rachel Wood a number of tough questions. And I know that she didn't, she won't, and she hasn't. But I have some questions for Evan Rachel Wood. And perhaps if I could pass these along to Amy Berg, then, maybe she could do a follow-up film in which she asks these questions. I know I'll be waiting forever for that. It's not going to happen. But at any rate, these are the questions that I think Evan Rachel Wood, if she's going to sling this mud around at every outlet she can find, and she and these accusers are going to go after this man relentlessly, ceaselessly, in about every way you can think of. Well, I would like one day for someone to ask them some fucking questions. And so I have some questions for Evan Rachel Wood. This is not comprehensive. This is not everything that I would like to ask her, nor does this encompass all of my issues with her testimony and with her accusations and the accuser's accusations. But Be that as it may, these are my questions. Tell me, Evan, what is up with all of the many, many, many interviews that you did while you were dating Marilyn Manson, after you dated Marilyn Manson, and even up until a few years ago, when you talked about how wonderful the relationship was, how healthy the relationship was, how he finally allowed you to be yourself, where you talked about how you loved the edgy aspects of your relationship, et cetera, et cetera. It's a completely different story than the one that you are presenting now. So I'm just curious, what was up with that? Or was that was just a bunch of, I guess, bullshit that he was forcing you to say or something? Anyway, so I'd like to know what's up with that, with all of those interviews that contradict what you're saying now. And why, did you offer him a message publicly commiserating with him when his parent died just several yeif you're so abusive? Number two, if Marilyn Manson is such a monster, why did he not only welcome you back after you cheated on him, but also supported you when you aborted another man's child, fetus, whatever? We know that this has happened. I've interviewed one person publicly who attested to this, and some others privately. And I just think it's interesting behavior for someone who is supposedly a monster, as you claim Marilyn Manson is, a jealous, possessive monster, that he would be so supportive of you after you cheated on him and went back to him with another man's fetus in your belly. Number three, you claimed that you were beaten. Do you have any medical records or photographic evidence? Also, number four, you claim that you went to a lawyer several years ago and you presented just mounds of evidence against Marilyn Manson, photographs, videotapes, whatever. And that lawyer said, oh, wow, this is really conclusive, but the statute of limitations is up. Wah, wah. Well, I'm curious, do you have any of that evidence to show us? Because, I understand that you may think that we're not entitled to it, but since you were going out publicly, you're not keeping this private, you're not keeping it limited to an investigation or a lawsuit, but actually you're spewing this every chance, every outlet you can get, everywhere you're spewing these allegations, then surely, if you're going to make all of this public, surely you have a little bit of that evidence for the public to see, right? Just a little, like, one picture, and not one with the head cut off like Esme Bianco tried to pass off as her messed up back. Also, number five, what are we to make of the fact that you say that you've said before in your testimony that Marilyn Manson hid a terrible drug problem from you and that he forced you to take drugs, but then it's come out, all of these different pictures of you happily engaging in drug use, and you're snorting cocaine off of the end of a Nazi knife, right? A German knife, and your Nazi gear or whatever. And I've talked to people, I've interviewed people on my show who talk about that you were, an avid drug consumer. And again, there's pictures proving it and everything. So what about that lie? I'm just curious. And then also, number six, when you said that Manson would wreck your home, I'm curious, which home was that? And where were Manson's assistants? Do you have any witnesses to this? Any photographs or anything? Even some stage photographs like Amber Heard put out about Johnny Depp when, she was trying to show that he wrecked the room. Just curious. Again, just be nice to have pictures of any of this. Number seven. When you said that Marilyn Manson kept you away from your friends and family and tried to isolate you from your friends and family, well, then what are we to make of the fact that you did a play with your family in 2009, I believe it was, when you were dating Manson, which would have required you to have spent a lot of time with your family. And also, apparently, Manson hated your family so much that he invited them to Florida, and you hung out at Disney World, and they got VIP passes backstage to his performance. I've talked to people who've confirmed this, including Zach Schiffer, who did an interview on my channel. There's pictures of it, whatever. I'm just curious, it doesn't seem like he really exerted that much effort to isolate you from your friends and family, since there are these pictures we've seen of you with your friends and family and doing different things with your friends and your family during this period. Seems a little sketchy to me. Maybe you can explain. Also, when you say that your friends and your family tried to intervene in this abusive relationship, does that mean that your parents and your friends were aware that you were being abused by this man? Just curious. Where are we? Number 8. I think I might have gotten off on the numbering, but whatever. Number 8. When you said that after your breakup with Manson that you put time and space between you and him, that makes it sound like you recognized immediately after the relationship that it was abuse, that you needed time and space from this abusive behavior. And yet you claim that it took you how many years, 7 years or whatever, to recognize that what happened was abuse. It's a little inconsistent. Maybe you can explain. Number 9. What went on during the recruitment process for the other accusers? Because we know, we've seen the emails. Greta Aurora has shown us the emails. We know that your activist girlfriend, at the time, Ilma Gore, sent emails to Manson's former girlfriends and women who had slept with him, hung out with him, trying to recruit these women to join in this movement against Manson and to join in this kind of conspiracy against him. And so I'm just curious, what was this recruitment process like? I have talked to some people behind the scenes who are familiar with it, who say that you actually had to convince a number of the women that they had been abused, that basically this recruitment was not a nice, natural, organic get-together of women who felt that they had been abused, but it was rather an opportunity for you to take a number of these disgruntled women who had been basically, rejected by Manson or fallen through the cracks over the years. It was an opportunity for you to rewrite their history and to convince them that they had been abused and that they needed to move forward with these allegations and lawsuits and so forth. And of course, with the HBO documentary. So I'm just curious, what was that recruitment process like? What were the conversations like that you had, when Ashley Morgan Smithline spent all of those nights on your couch that she talked about online, and then you had to actually go back and delete that comment, and then she had to cover over it and make it seem like she hadn't been saying what she was really saying, which is that she'd been colluding with you and the others for quite a fucking while. I'm just curious what that whole process was like, what those conversations were like, because it seemed like you and your activist girlfriend at the time basically recruited these women to join in a hoax against this man. So I would like to know a little more about that. Where are we now? Number 10, you accused Manson of pedophilic grooming. Seeing as how even you admit that you didn't meet Manson until you were 18 and that you didn't start dating until then, or was it 19 even? I just am curious what your definition of a pedophile is and what is your definition of grooming? It seems like you went into that relationship as an adult of your own free will and you were even supported in it by your parents. Or at least that's what we heard in these interviews. That's what we read in these interviews that you'd given. That Manson and your dad got along really well. So I'm just curious, your dad was okay with the pedophilic grooming then? Or do you think maybe you got your definitions a little bit skewed? All right, number 11. What about all those who've called you out for lying, including Manzin, Zach Schiffer, Leslie Lane, Paula, and others? I'm just curious, what of that? And what about all of the women that I've talked to, the number of women who dated Manson and people who knew him who say that they don't recognize any of the behavior that you're talking about? I'm just curious what you think about that. Also, what is the deal with you and your ex, Jamie Bell, your ex-husband and the father of your child? For a while, people told me that you must be telling the truth about Manson because you didn't have anything bad to say about Jamie Bell. And if you had a problem, right, then surely that problem would express itself with other exes too, not just with Marilyn Manson. Well, actually, in fact, you have kind of been going after Jamie Bell, haven't you, for months now? You talk about, you post things on Instagram, messages and stories about narcissistic exes, about, difficult co-parenting, about why women have to leave, abusive marriages or problematic marriages and all of this. You talk about the burdens burdens of you post things about the burdens of being a single mother with a bad co-parent. I mean, really, we know you're talking about Jamie Bell. Okay, you don't have to veil it. So evidently you do have a problem with him. But what I'm actually more interested in is, what do you have to say about the fact that apparently your ex, Jamie Bell, has accused you in court of lying about this Marilyn Manson situation? In fact, as you know, court documents leaked to the Daily Mail, what was it, several weeks ago, show that your ex-husband, Jamie Bell, accused you of making up these things about Manson in order partly to keep him away from his son. Because apparently you have been trying to separate Jamie Bell's son from him, and you made up all these excuses that this separation was necessary because you basically had to go in hiding because Manson had threatened to fuck your son, as you said. Really despicable, honestly, of you to bring a child, your own child, into this making up stuff, you know? I mean, that's just really, when you think about how bizarre Evan Rachel Wood's behavior has been. If you believe, like I do, that she's not telling the truth, then she would actually go so far as to put something really crass and vulgar and disturbing out there like that, referring to her son, just to burnish her image against Manson. Well, of course, I guess that was in court. So she wasn't lying publicly. She was just lying publicly in court, right? Or just lying to Jamie Bell in order to keep his son away from him. Anyway, whatever. It's still very sick. Number 13. At what point did documentary filmmaker Amy Berg become involved in this situation? We know that she said that she's known you for 10 years and you've been working on this thing for years. And I'm just curious, how did it come about that there was a documentary crew to film you when you decided to name Manson as your abuser? And do you really think that helps your credibility? I'm just curious. But yeah, I would like to know a lot more. Just like I'm curious about that recruitment process, I'd like to know a whole lot more about how this supposedly really painful, problematic memory of yours and all of this abuse seemed to translate so beautifully into this, you know, nice prefab HBO-ready documentary. I'm just kind of curious about that. Number 15, have you ever been diagnosed with a personality disorder? And when you spent that time in the psychiatric hospital, I'm just curious, would you like to share what your diagnosis was? Did they find anything really problematic about you in that process? And then finally, my last question, do you have any fucking evidence whatsoever? Because you haven't shown any, and none of you have. Would be nice. Maybe you can time it for the summer when the HBO documentary comes out. Thanks, everybody. As always, support my work, subscribe to my channel, support me on PayPal, Patreon. Every little bit helps. I'm not paid by Marilyn Manson, not paid by any of his people. I just do this work because I believe in it, and I think it's fun. The truth, telling the truth, standing up for the truth, it can be fun. But I hate that this is happening to Manson, and I hate that these lies will continue to be perpetuated. But maybe Evan Rachel Wood can help us out and answer a few of those questions if anybody is interested to ever actually ask her.